G'day everyone, how are you? It's James Beazley, the Managing Director of Six Group, and welcome to the Weekly Bees. As you can see, I'm sitting in a quite interesting shirt. Had a comment from the last Weekly Bees from Mr. Jonathan Berlan, who is Global Head of Resourcing and Talent Operations at Ipsen, wanting me to do the next Weekly Bees in an Easy Tiger t-shirt. There it is, Jonathan. Quick one for this Weekly Bees is I'm going to be talking about leadership assessment. I was just this week up in Humberside meeting with the Catch crew there, and we were talking about this whole concept of leadership assessment. And for us, leadership assessment really comes down to what are you wanting to get out of leadership assessment. And the number one thing, the core thing, is really you're testing an individual or a team or an organization's capability. And it's quite an ambiguous, nebulous type concept, but over the last 12 years, we at Six here have put a lot of effort into research around how do you actually measure an individual's capability. So I'm going to talk to you about that today. And hopefully within the next 4 to 5 minutes, it will give you a really good idea and a framework for how you can look at capability within your organization as well. So first of all, capability, I've kind of created a bit of a formula on it. The first one is, what I look at is drivers. What I mean by this is what drives an individual. And you can do this primarily through psychometric assessment and evaluation. There's heaps of them out there. Whilst I'm not going to necessarily get into who's good, who's not, the types of psychometric profiles that say you're an ENTJ, or you're a yellow hat, or you're a penguin, or you're whatever, I'm a little bit cynical on those ones, and the only reason being is because they give you a label. And once you give someone a label, they seem to work towards that label, irrespective of anything else that's happening. So the type of psychometrics we like to use, and which really defines this, what is driving a person, are ones like Saville, ones like Hogan, for instance. And the reason being is because they work on 3 levels. One is what's most important to them, what's least important, what do they like doing, what don't they like doing, and what do they reckon they're great at, and what don't they reckon they're great at. And that gives you a heap of information, both about what's driving the individual, and that can also give an indication by how is the organization driving them, how is that leader driving them, and are they driving them in the right direction or not. That's one. Next one is what I call experience. This is pretty much the experience they've had throughout their whole work life. Have they had a very broad experience in working for a whole heap of different companies in different countries, or do they have a very deep experience of maybe working with 1 or 2 or even 3 companies, but for a very, very long time? But it's the experiences that create the foundation and building blocks for what our mental models are and our perception of what is right and what is wrong. So our experience will show us this worked, therefore we think it's right. And some of our experiences will be like, oh my God, that was just rubbish, so therefore that's wrong. So it's really good to get that insight. Next, what we want to do is look at competence. And competence is split into 2. You have functional and you have behavioural. For us, we reckon it's too hard to assess someone over every single competence under the sun. We use 4 functional must-haves. So what functionally must they be able to do to be successful in any given job or context? And then 3 behaviorals as well. And behavioral competence is an interesting one, because although it's looking at how do people go about it from a behavioral point of view, invariably they have to give you a functional example. Classic example, results driven or driving for results. Type of question you'd ask is, can you give me an example of a project or piece of work that you delivered where you exceeded expectations? So there has to be a functional example which they did and where they exceeded expectations. Invariably we always get where we asked the question, where did you exceed expectations? Oh, it was a project they gave me because they didn't think I'd deliver it, but I did deliver it, and so therefore exceeded expectations. Well, that's the rub, guys and girls. They wouldn't give you the job unless they thought you could actually deliver it. So where did you go beyond? That's just one example. So we look at competence. And then finally, we want to get an indication about a person's agility. And the way to do that is, we say, is through a real play exercise. Yeah, so I'll just write that there. Real play. We give a very defined scenario, and for us we look at how constrained is a person by the system that's in front of them. We want to see how their drivers, their experience and their competence makes them agile in what's in front of them. So can they pinpoint the issues, and then can they do some blue sky thinking around consequences? And once they've done all of that blue sky thinking, can they bring it right back to workable actions? And can they do it? Do they prioritize it? And how do they prioritize it? And then do they look at pros and cons? And then finally, can they look at second and third horizon stuff in McKinsey speak of strategic implications or long-term implications? And how can they bring that back? So once you've done that, it gives you a pretty good idea of the person. But it means nothing. Because really what you need to know is you need to put all of that against a context. And that's the denominator in our formula. Yeah? Is the context. For me, the context is the playing field that determines what sport you're going to play. So, if you're a private equity-backed organisation, your horizon is probably pretty short term. You're trying to get that business to as much revenue as possible, get it ship shape, package it up, and then flog it off to the next person. Whereas if you're working for, say, an oil and gas major, your horizon is far longer. It's a 10-year horizon. So that context plays and gives you a playing field of having different capabilities to cope and different capabilities to help drive that business and realise the strategy that's there. So that's it, guys. That's our formula. That's how we go about it, but I'd be really interested in your comments to see if you agree with it, if you don't agree with it, if you think there's also something I've missed as well. For you, Jonathan Berlan, I've got my Easy Target t-shirt here, and just for you, I've gone out and bought your very own, and this is coming in the post to you. For all of those out there at the moment that also love this Easy Target t-shirt, with a bit of a competition going, which is the person who shares the Weekly Bees the most and gets me all out there on Twitter and LinkedIn, I'm also going to send you an Easy Target t-shirt as well. We'll run that competition for the next 3 months, and at the end of the 3 months in December, I'm going to send this to send this to a lucky winner. Don't worry, I'll get your size and everything as well. So any comments below, love to hear them. And that's it for this week on the Weekly Bees. This is just a PS, Jonathan Berlan. When you get your shirt, I want to see a picture of that shirt with you in it on LinkedIn next week. Thanks, mate.